is what is the role of the designer in making form. I believe that the thing that we do, which makes us different from every other professional, is that we create form. Now, form is misunderstood. Form is thought to be an aesthetic exercise, like how is its shape, what is the tectonics, what are the style of the object. But form is not really about object, it's about relationships. And when we make form, whether it's a building or a city or something else, we are really creating a network of relationships between elements that are either fixed or movable, which create flows. And everything that we make that has a form is embedded within a larger entity which also has form. So this is the idea of systems situated within systems, situated within systems. We know this intuitively, but we don't discuss it explicitly. Yeah. Because if we discuss it explicitly, it changes how we design. I believe that. That I think that if we approach design as a question of making objects, then we produce one kind of architecture. If we create form with the intention of making relationships, we create a different kind of architecture. And I think that an architecture that is relational is very important to the discussion of sustainability.
Yes, sure.
So give you a very simple example. If I'm thinking like a conventional designer, I will make the condominium private. I will make it for the people inside. I will try to make the condominium green by reducing energy consumption. I will make it more water efficient. But my focus in making this project will be the well-being and the profit for the people inside the condo. Maybe the developer, maybe the occupants. If I start to think in a relational way, if I start to imagine the same project as being within a system of systems, then maybe the question becomes, how does the water flow through this piece of land? It's not, the piece of land doesn't have a wall around it. It's part of a flow, a hydrological system. How does the water flow through it? How does the public interact with it? How do people from outside interact with this development? How does nature interact with it? Where I live in Singapore, I live in a condo with many trees. Very beautiful. But if I was designing it for a relational development, then the trees I select and the way I organize the landscaping will make it attractive to other species. And my condo will become part of a network that belongs to the world. And even though it's a private development, even though it's profit making, it's for the comfort of a few, it can still contribute to the world around it by being a part of the network. So once you begin to see design as an act of insertion, where you take one system and you put it within a wider system, then you begin to ask the question, how can design create positive impact on the world around it? This is my hypothesis, and in the last few years I have been experimenting with this in studio with my students. We are investigating systems thinking, but we're also investigating form making as a platform for sustainability. So the question I will ask them is, if you are making an office building, how can the office building produce energy, produce food, produce water, create space for biodiversity, create space for humans, and still be an office building? So then they have to figure this out, because it's hypothetical at the moment, but they have to figure it out. So what they do is they will select a building in Singapore, let's say an office building or a shopping center or a hotel, and they'll say, okay, how much is the area of this and what is the function of this? And then they will redesign it on the same piece of land. And then suddenly you will see the form change, because if you go from an object-centric approach to a relational approach, the architecture changes because the architecture must talk to the world around it. Then the second thing they do is they ask, how much does this cost? Very important. Because if you're going to engage with government and business, you must understand the cost parameter. And they do a cost analysis of the before and the after. And they develop a cost framework. Then they ask who benefits from this. So my research through my work, my book and my students is asking this question of a systems approach that is a doorway, a kind of a way of thinking about sustainability. Because I feel that the problem of sustainability, actually not sustainability, the problem of green, which is different from sustainability. The problem of green design is that we have got used to thinking about buildings as if they are objects within themselves. I believe that everything is relational. You know, it's like human beings. If you know how to get along with people, if you are generous, if you are friendly, then your world becomes positive. If you are hostile, you are isolated, then you live a different kind of existence. So to make a better society, people need to be more generous and kind. Same principle. To make a better city, the buildings need to be generous and kind. So the idea of generosity is central to sustainability. You cannot be sustainable without being generous. Okay, very good. What I'm talking about is a third level, which is what we call net positive or regenerative, which is to say I don't just reduce my impact or create zero impact. I create surplus. I create something that is useful to the world. You know, so I'm talking about that group. How to do it? So my book is coming out.
Wow, I want to read it.
Yeah, no,
I'm sure I will.
I mean, I'm very interested in this, and my book is a documentation of many projects in Asia
Very interesting.
that are trying to do this.
Wow.
And why do they do it?
Okay.
And who benefits from it, and who pays for it?
So is it related to eco-friendly or architecture? Or
Yeah, but I mean, I think
it's
it's the next level of discussion.
Next level.
So if you imagine this as a graph, then there is the do less harm group. There is the do no harm group. And there is the do good, net positive. So I'm interested in that. But I think the problem of Asia is what you saw in Mumbai, you know, in slums and in high density areas where, you know, there's no sewage system and, you know, you have 300,000 people per square kilometer. That is the problem we have to deal with. So how do we be sustainable in that world is my question. I jokingly say in my book that it's very easy to be sustainable in the countryside. Meaning if you're building like, you know, if you're building a school in a village, it's very easy to be sustainable. I don't mean easy. I mean you can do things to be zero energy and zero water, and you can because you have space, you know. But when you are building the same school on a very small piece of land in Bangladesh, then it's challenging. To try to do the same things is really challenging. So I'm interested in that. The intensity of the pressure of the developmental process. My central position is this, that we are now at a point where we cannot be talking like we did 10 years ago. We can't, it's not realistic. So if we are going to say how do we consume less energy and how do we reduce our carbon emissions, it's too late for that. We have to be proactive, we have to repair the damage. So if we want to repair the damage, then how do we go about it? What are the things, what is damaged? You know, what are the ecosystems that we have destroyed in Asia? I'm mostly interested in what we're doing in Asia. So my projects are all Asia, second based. So I'm interested in how do we bring design as an instrument of healing to repair and restore and to regenerate. So it's not just energy and water, but it's also ecosystems. It's the urban systems. So how do we create restorative design. This is what I'm looking at.
Are you focusing on city or just on one architecture building or just wide area like that?
So in the book, I'm interested in the parcel scale, meaning to say that how, of course, we can talk about urban design, the urban scale and the city scale, but I'm interested in how individual projects become agents of change.
Wow.
Because I think that we can, of course, we can do a lot of magic with the city if we know how to design the city better. But the problem is the city is not just the big things, it's 1,000 small things. In Singapore, for example, maybe there are 9,000-10,000, actually I don't know what the number is, but there are many small pieces of land owned by different people. If you just look at the city and say, I organize the city with better transport, okay, that is important. But what about all these pieces of land? So the book I'm doing is focusing on the parcel scale. What is the developer doing? What is the private development capable of doing?
Wow.
And then at the end of the book, I have one chapter which looks at aggregation. This is by the work of my students, which is to say that if every building were to behave like this, what would happen to the city? So it's a bottom-up kind of thinking. There is a top-down thinking, which is also important. I'm not saying that it's either or. I'm just saying that my exploration is looking at the bottom-up. From the top down, there are many people who are also talking like this. But that's another book.
Okay. So